Mayor Burke was elected in Chattanooga in early 2003. Before that, had a distinguished career in law and public service with the Tennessee Senate, and has made quite a name for Chattanooga with their incredible 100 gigabit fiber connection, and is one of those smaller cities that you don't necessarily always think of as being on the map of this kind of stuff, but now is. All right, thank you all.
So thanks, Lydia. Let me get connected up here. First, show of hands. How many people have been to Chattanooga? Oh, that's pretty good. That's okay. Good.
Come back.
Yeah, you never really know in Washington, D.C. whether people have gotten out much. So this is a real thrill to have you at Brookings. We met about 6 months ago. And, you know, if you want to see affirmative energy in this country, go hang out with mayors, right? Particularly mayors who are just so positive about their place and the distinctive culture they have and the real economic, social, environmental potential. And Mayor Burke really fits the mold. And so when some of us think about Chattanooga, I mean, a couple things pop in the head. Most polluted city in 1970, wasn't that the sort of label? But then a city that began to transform, particularly around physical space, particularly around the downtown, and began to send a signal slowly, but then accelerating, hey, there's something happening here. How would you describe the transformation of Chattanooga over the last, let's say, 25, even 50 years?
Well, if you think about Chattanooga, in 1969, Walter Cronkite called us the dirtiest city in America. And the good news was that the air got cleaner. The bad news was that it got cleaner because all the manufacturing jobs picked up and left. And so in the 1970s, we saw tremendous declines. And even in the 1980s, as I was in high school, I used to tell people, you know, if you had a date, you'd want to take them downtown because you could be alone. This was a great place.
Okay, someone's got to tweet that. That's that is really tweetable.
And so we were the only city that lost more than 10% of our population in the 1970s and 80s that gained it in the 1990s. And this was because I think we learned the lesson of hanging on to our past for too long. And you could really see in the 1980s that people started to plan for what was the next stage of the Chattanooga story. And now if you go to Chattanooga, and any of you who've been there and you've talked to community leaders, everybody talks about you know, the Chattanooga story and the Chattanooga way. This is kind of a myth that's grown up about public-private partnerships and the way that we plan for the future, because we had this horrible legacy of the 1970s and decline. And then what you see now is we have a vibrant downtown. There's tons of people down there. There's energy. We're the only home in the United States for Volkswagen manufacturing. And we have this gigabit per second network that Lydia talked about, which is 600 square miles of fiber optics that run to every home and every business in our area.
So let's build from that, because again, it goes really back to Lydia's question. We think about innovation, or perhaps we think about innovation districts, and your mind immediately goes to Boston or to San Francisco or Seattle or to New York. One of the reasons why we asked you here today is we see really many cities in the United States and metropolitan areas really having the distinctive potential to leverage their own assets. So you mentioned gigabit. What do you see as the platform for innovation, both in terms of the infrastructure, this really unique infrastructure, you should describe how that has come to be, but then also companies, entrepreneurs, different sectors and clusters that can really build from that?
Well, one of my concerns when I read your book was we talk a lot about Boston and Philadelphia and places, but Chattanooga is a mid-sized southern city. And so we need to be the example, to me, of how innovation grows and expands throughout our country, because it can't just be Boston and San Francisco. It's got to be through our mid-sized cities. So we're excited to be at the forefront of this movement. The gig has really made, I think, had a transformative effect on our city. Again, we thought ourselves in the past as a manufacturing town. We did, in 2009, apply for ARA funds through our electric power board to get this smart grid. It started out as the smart grid every place in our city. We received that funding, and about $115 million of federal funds came in through the stimulus, which combined with about $220 million of bonding allowed EPB, that's again the power board, to run the smart grid all throughout our city. Now that's given us tremendous energy savings and lots of positive things from the smart grid. The second part they did was having that fiber optic that goes that last mile. Lots of people have fiber optics. It actually connects to homes and businesses in every single location because everybody gets an energy bill. What that does is allows us to reach every person with gigabit per second technology. So we have the fastest, cheapest, most pervasive internet in the Western Hemisphere. It's an incredible asset. And what that really has done is change the way we think about ourselves. It's not just about the asset. All of a sudden, Chattanooga thought, wait, we're at the head of the curve, not at the end. And so we started having gig tanks, which are these places where people come together, and we have teams who are building on innovation and ideas. We have 48-hour launches, and you saw this tech and innovative ecosystem really start to grow as a result.
So what kind of companies are either, evolving, adapting to this possibility, or literally coming to Chattanooga because of what you represent?
Well, we certainly pitch the capacity of the gig to everybody who comes, and people understand, listen, this is basically a bigger pipe. We can always use a bigger pipe. But to me, the exciting parts are, I want to give you an example of one company called QuickQ. QuickQ started up with the idea that there needed to be some advancements made in text messaging, and particularly the way that you make reservations for restaurants. So they come together, they went to a 48-hour launch, which basically workshops the idea. They walked out and they hired only local developers. And then they got really a small amount of local capital. Great story for us because it's all local. They started developing this app, and then they went to a local company called Craftworks, which owns, for example, Gordon Biersch. Many of you have been to a Gordon Biersch restaurant. So they team up with an existing business, and they start to use and demo their work. Now, a couple of months ago, after about 18 months after this initial 48-hour launch, QuickQ sells to OpenTable for $11.25 million. Now, we don't see those kinds of exits in mid-sized southern cities that often. And more importantly, OpenTable decided to keep an office in Chattanooga as a result. And so, as I've told you before, to me, what this is about is the importance of pairing up existing businesses and small new companies, and the way in which they can truly build a bridge together that brings innovation to an area.
I clearly am in the wrong business. That could be a whole nother sort of forum. Think about the talent pool in Chattanooga. Your high schools, how far back you bring computer science into K through 8, community college, UT. So what's that ecosystem look like? Are you producing sufficient talent, particularly in this convergence economy where tech really is disrupting so many other sectors?
Now, this is a struggle for mid-sized southern cities. I mean, it's going to continue to be. I know President Fry talked a little bit about the need for great schools in an innovation district, and this is a place where we have to continue to grow. If we're going to be this great city, we have to be more inclusive in terms of spreading that talent pool. But that helps not just the people we're spreading it to, but everyone, because we'll have the base of talent that we need to continue to grow this ecosystem. I mean, if you look at what's happening now, we have tremendous energy. And I highlight the QuickQ story because it's so local. But what I hear a lot too from the developers as I go around is we need more. We need more. It's this constant drumbeat of we need more. And so we're engaging the local university. To me, they're a critical part of an innovation district because every person that they send out who's smart and thoughtful and creative, really transforms the city.
So take us into Chattanooga virtually. Is there literally a district? I mean, is there 50 acres, 100 acres, 200 acres of land either in the downtown or near downtown that already is occupied by some of these innovation assets and is the organic place for this? Or are you in sort of a Boston situation where you literally have to reconfigure and reimagine a portion of the city?
Well, we really don't have 50 acres in our downtown right now, which is great and also a little bit different than some of these other places. We have seen, actually, there was a great deal of community engagement on the south side of Chattanooga, and you started to see accelerators and new entrepreneurs on our south side. It's actually our main street. So several years ago, there was a question earlier about foundations. Right. Our foundations have engaged in a couple places in Chattanooga. One was along the waterfront, and if you've seen the aquarium, that was really the first transformation of Chattanooga's downtown. The second place where you've seen a lot of public-private partnership is along Main Street, which kind of bookends another side of downtown. If the waterfront is down here, Main
Right.
Street, there's all of downtown, and then Main Street is on the other end. And you've started to see a tremendous amount of change in that area, large part because of entrepreneurs, but also housing is getting gobbled up, and
Sure.
and you see coffee shops and those indicators that say, wait, young, creative, innovative people are right here.
So I remember going to Chattanooga in the late 1990s. Ken Hayes is here. I remember the mayor at the time took me up to the sort of roof of City Hall, and he said, "Look south. What do you see?" I'm from Brooklyn, New York, so I see trees. I don't know. I mean, is this a trick question? And he says, "That's Atlanta coming." How much of what's going on in Chattanooga is a drift up of Atlanta talent because of what you represent? I mean, really, there is an unbelievable quality of life in that city. And how much of it really is a broader regional or even national phenomenon?
I think it's broader than that. Chattanooga is a quality of life city. The reason that people come there, they live there, they put their businesses there is quality of life. And so if we're not making the decisions at City Hall and elsewhere that bring quality of life, then we're losing ground. But what I see, I think, is Atlanta is its own animal, and they are expanding all the time. And Chattanooga really is a place that we feel like we have such a distinct identity, and we're building this mid-sized city profile that we let Atlanta be what they're going to be, and we try to have our own Dolly Parton-esque existence.
She's not from Chattanooga.
She's from Tennessee. She's not far, yeah.
Okay. At some point, she's going to sort of call Brookings and say, "What's going on?" Okay.
we have Usher. We have Usher, so.
Yeah, I mean, she should have trademarked that thing, I mean, a long time ago. I'll get a dime for every time I mention it. And folks, get ready for questions, right? This inclusion question, right, which is really fever pitch, frankly, as it should be in this country, because of the growth of income inequality, which has really just been heightened and sharpened in the aftermath of the recession. How do you answer that question in the context of Chattanooga? Because again, having been there, the downtown is incredibly vibrant and distinctive, but you can go to areas and neighborhoods that are really not that far away and see hyper poverty and know that there really isn't that connection right now.
So this is a really important question for us. People don't think about Chattanooga this way, but there was a recent study that came out and had the 10 biggest raises in rents in our country over the last 5 years. Chattanooga was number 7.
Wow.
So when you think about a vibrant downtown, we have that vibrant downtown. The consequence of that is tremendous desire for housing and particularly rents. It's driving up our rents, and we have to figure out these ways to combat it. So, at least we're trying to do a few things. We established a task force about housing and downtown. We will be putting together a pilot program that essentially will allow for redevelopment, but only if certain portions of the buildings are accessible to affordability. We are pushing towards a housing trust. Again, all these different elements, but you want your city to be desirable. You want urban areas to be the place where everybody wants to be. And a consequence of that is that if you're not thoughtful and proactive, everybody will want to be there, and the people who get there first tend to be the people with money.
Thoughts, comments? Yeah, right over here.
Thank you very much. 1, 2.
No, it should turn on itself.
Okay. And I can shout.
You can go ahead and shout.
Okay, I'm Dimitri Zvarev. I work at the World Bank at the Competitive Cities Program. Exciting story. I wanted to ask Mr. Mayor, what was the thinking behind investing into this infrastructure? What were the decision-making process? How did you decide that this would be something that would set you apart? And then probably a question to Bruce as well. Is this a story that kind of can be replicated? Is this something that breaks the trend? Because, you know, Moretti talks about innovation concentration, not spreading around, and innovation being a reason for why gap between cities is opening up, not being bridged. So to what extent is this a part of the city should solve? Thank you.
Well, the question was, why did I decide to do this? Why is this a push for us? And I think there's really two reasons. One is I want to thank Bruce and Brookings. I read the book, and so I'm the best salesperson for the book. I go everywhere. Hey, you know, here's why we're doing this. Read the book. I'm both a member of the club and I guess an owner of the book. So this really. When I read the book, though, what it actually did was it started to crystallize all the elements that were already happening in Chattanooga, and then and make me understand what we needed to do to take them to the next level. So as I said, we had this incredible asset of fiber optics running through every single portion of our city. We could see this economy growing. I felt everywhere that I went, there was another startup popping. And I don't want to see that die. In fact, what you can do is, even talking about innovation districts puts it at the forefront of the agenda, and that drives more discussion. If there's anything that makes you believe in the power of marketing, it's being a mayor. You can drive discussion in a city on really a very active level. And so being able to say, wait, look, the innovation economy is happening here, is a way for our entire city to then wake up and go, yes, it is. Now, what's my role? How can I be part of it?
You know, so my answer to the question really builds on what Kofi was saying before. I sort of see just endless possibilities for innovation in the United States and frankly, in many other economies, in part because of the real challenges that our country and the world faces, and in part related to urbanization essentially being the unifying disruptive trend in the world today. So, you know, when I look at what is possible now, I can see any number of cities that can basically declare, we're going to be a first mover on taking our city to no carbon. We're going to be a first mover on basically sustainable products and services around the scarcity of water. I mean, just think about what the growing cities in China and India and Latin America and Africa need, right? And if the United States, with our advanced research institutions, with capital that can be unlocked and deployed, with entrepreneurial culture, with a diverse population that can reach really all parts of the world, there's no end to what kind of innovation we can produce in companies, with workers, and in cities. So I don't really see this as zero sum. I just see this as endless potential. Last week I was in Copenhagen, which basically has willed itself to be a no-carbon city by 2025. What happens? A whole bunch of companies want to be there to experiment around, let's do 100% plastic recycling. Let's be the place that cracks the code on big data and resilient growth. So I think we're at a period where there really is limitless potential for small and medium-sized and larger cities and metros, but then that collaborate to compete. And really, as Julie was describing, out of the Stockholm experience or the Copenhagen experience, think about this triple helix of universities, corporations, public and civic sectors. I mean, a quadruple helix, but that come together and crack the hard issues in the world. I think there's a question right back there. Yep.
I'm Bob Hershey. I'm a consultant. To what extent are you able to use the internet to get together the projects and get economic consensus for what people want to do?
Again, how do you use the internet to sort of, I guess, get consensus within the city for the projects?
Right. Well, specifically our gig, the gig for us is really a mobilizing force. I want to talk about a couple of things with it. Number one is, Bruce said a little bit about big data. EPB was getting about 3 million data points a year off of its grid before the gigabit system. Now it gets 17 million a day. Now think about what that does in terms of possibilities for entrepreneurship and innovation. We now have 17 million data hits a day, a few trillion a year, and that allows people who are interested in civic startups to come in and figure out what can we do with energy and the possibilities of going to zero carbon. It also allows for private enterprise to come in and figure out what can we do with data that will allow for better servicing of people or changing the way that we build products or what's the utility of the future look like. All these things are happening, and what we need to do is come together as a city and bring this smart grid potential to its greatest heights. The second part is that, again, the gig is such a mobilizing force for us because we're at the front of this curve. Right. And so people keep talking about, we want Google Fiber. Well, we have beyond Google Fiber. We have a gigabit per second service everywhere to homes and businesses. And so we're able to use that and really pull people together in a way that motivates our economy.
We need a pipe from Chattanooga to Brookings, but that's a different question.
Thanks, Sandra Bear with the Smart Cities Council. We see this innovation all over the world, but I'm so curious about the mid-sized opportunity. And what are your collective favorite metrics for sort of seeing that this is successful? I mean, we're hearing them as you speak, but are there certain things that we should be advising cities to think about as they start this process?
So it really goes back to what Nicole was saying. We don't know how to measure, I think, this is a Brookings admission, right? We don't know how to measure cities in a way because cities are integrated. And the way we measure things in this country tends to be very compartmentalized, very specialized. Let's look at housing. No, let's look at small business. No, let's look at patents. No, so we've all become sort of specialists in a world that has gone urban, which means it's gone to the integrated whole. Cities are really an asset class, right, taken together. And so I think what is happening in these districts and is happening with the urbanization of tech, and tech permeates everything, so it's not like the urbanization of Silicon Valley, it's the urbanization of the broader tech supersector, is a challenge to how we measure things. And I think one of the most interesting parts of this initiative going forward is how do we crack the code on a new set of metrics, around economic progress, but then social inclusion and ultimately environmental sustain. I don't think we're there yet. And again, we have these very rigid kind of ways of measuring jobs, and yet we're in a convergence economy. So this is a message to everyone in think tank row.
Well, I would just say that I guess I have a little bit different perspective. We're constantly trying to figure out what we are measuring, and we're putting up Chattadata soon, which will have all these different. We talked about Chattanooga, but that seemed a little frivolous.
Chattanooga sounds like something you'd eat.
Yeah, that's right. But to me, I think for us, what I'm constantly thinking about is how do people conceive of their city? What do they think it's like, and how do we make that great mid-sized city? And that's the convergence, as Bruce says, of so many different factors. I'm in a different situation because people tell me what they think all the time. And what I see actually is, despite, of course, a lot of concerns and a lot of issues, people feel momentum and progress. And for us, if we can continue to make people feel like we see a direction, we see where we're headed, and we are part of the future, that's really important. I think that everybody in the city, whether they're part of an innovative economy currently or not, understand that their kids need to be, and that their grandkids need to be. And if they don't think that we're providing that accessibility for people in the future, then they know that we're headed back to that 1969 era.
One more question. Ellen decides.
My name is Pam Lindstrom. I'm a housing commissioner from Montgomery County. And I wanted to argue with Ms. Wagner, is that right? About the one who studied the European cities. And I have also studied a couple of the European cities, in particular Vienna and several of the Dutch cities, on their housing programs, affordable housing being one of my chief interests in life. And what struck me is first that she doesn't give them enough credit. Their housing programs are beyond anything that we have even dreamed of. And what struck me listening to the discussion today is that they, in particular, Vienna, Amsterdam, they apply this innovative, intentional thinking to their housing sectors as well, in which the cities develop a vision, and they set out the parameters, they even find the locations, and then the private sector responds. And the more that they ask of their housing developers, the more creative the housing developers get. So that, you know, they have housing developers who will do things that our very most progressive developers would be horrified just because they're not challenged to do this. I have to end with a question. All right, maybe it should be a question to the gentleman from JBG as to suppose they were challenged to provide, say, 60% social housing and 40% market rate housing in a vibrant urban area. How would they go? Would they even consider trying to do it?
Well, Ben may want to answer that. I just one thing, I don't know how many folks, it was either a New York Times or a Wall Street Journal article yesterday. The New York Times. And it was all about inclusionary zoning in New York City and the trade-offs that American cities are now beginning to make because we have the confluence of big forces, right? Demand for more rental housing, aging of our population, which means we have a different mix of housing, the rise of cities, innovation districts being a part of them, and the complete and utter withdrawal of the national government. Minor problem. So we're about to, I think, in the United States, I think these are really, is a great question and a great set of examples from some of our European friends. We're about to go through a period where city by city, we're going to have to fundamentally reinvent how do we design, how do we finance, and how do we deliver housing for a much broader portion of our population? Because we have been an unusual country where we've looked to Washington, D.C. and the federal government for subsidy and tax incentives, mostly for the better off, primary market, secondary market, et cetera, et cetera. So this is about to be as disruptive a period as we've experienced in the housing front in this country. And I think it's a great challenge that you put forward to look out beyond our borders, you know, to the Dutch or to the Austrians. Would anyone else like to respond? And then, Mayor, you, as always, all elected officials always have the last word at Brookings. So.
Hi, I'm back.
She's back.
So I think this is a great point, and it's an important point. This is really, I mean, let me just back up for 1 second. This concept of innovation districts, we in no way signed up to talking about and advertising and promoting this sort of economic gated community. This is not what this program and what this initiative is about, right? This is about creating a comprehensive live, work, that's affordable with schools and innovation that cuts across. The thing, though, that I have found in the specific European cities that are moving in these discrete areas of innovation is that, frankly, they haven't been thinking and having the same kinds of conversations that maybe you're finding in the Netherlands as a whole. Because there is a tremendous amount of innovation in the housing sector across Europe. Living in Europe, I am consistently impressed with that. What has been concerning to me, frankly, aside from 22 at Barcelona, is that their strategies haven't been as comprehensive as what I've been hearing, with the same kinds of conversations on innovation as here. So is there an innovation district in the Netherlands? I don't know. But what I would like to do is to understand, if there is one, what is their housing strategy? And how does that fold into what they're doing at the national level? So I think the bigger message here, really frankly, is that the inclusive piece is got to be woven in to this whole concept of innovation district. This is what we've been talking about in terms of when we write this paper, and when you read the longer paper, which is on the web, we spend a significant amount of time talking about this piece. Because if we forget this piece, we will in fact get to the point where one person said, if we get to economic gated communities, then we lost it.
Well, in some respects, Julie, what you're saying is that in many of these European countries, the platform for inclusive, equitable growth is so strong coming down from their national governments that when we get to these small district geographies, it's not really the focus.
The connections are so good.
Yeah.
The municipal, the city plans are so good.
Right. That's a great point. Ben.
Helsinki and Hamburg are way, 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 way better in all their innovation districts in revitalizing neighborhoods, or Hafen City.
Hafen City.
I mean, way better on social housing.
Well, a challenge has been put down. I'm Ben Jacobs again, and I would have no problem in responding to your question and responding to a dependable, predictable, overall program that put everyone on the same footing. One of the difficulties, and I mentioned in my opening remarks, is predictability. This area specifically is multi-jurisdictional. Various jurisdictions have greater and lesser predictability at any given season of the political calendar. So 60-40, not a problem. 80-20, not a problem. And now speaking 80% affordable. It's just it's finally a basic question of economics and who's going to bear the cost of underwriting some of the programs that on their face may not be economically viable at the outset. But a vibrant, integrated community, retail, residential, commercial, all levels of income is the most important element to maintain the vibrancy and the growth of any particular area. Thank you. Thanks for your question.
So, Mayor, last word, and since you're a mayor, about anything, but maybe about Chattanooga.
Well, what I would say is I think we live in the innovation century.
Yeah.
And you know, when I go out, I said we're the only home in the U.S. for Volkswagen manufacturing. every place that I go, we have lots of suppliers. You see robotics. And you see people putting things into these robots. And then most of the people who are employed there actually support the robotics. And that will make an impression on you if you go to enough of these places. And then the second trend that you see, which I ask all of them from having read the book, is have you started to co-locate your research alongside the manufacturing? And almost universally, they say, you know, we just moved a couple people here last week. And so this is being able to go out and see Chattanooga businesses every day and make that part of my normal course of life. That really accelerates the way that you think about the innovation world. Anything that can be done by a robot or a computer in the future will be done by a robot or a computer. And so what we have to add is creativity and thought and ideas. For Chattanooga, I'm going to say it again, we're a mid-sized southern city. Our future is based on being the place that figures out how mid-sized southern cities tap into the innovation century and the role that we play, and I think we're on our way.
So that was a perfect ending. Thank you everyone for coming. Thanks for folks who watched the webcast. It's an innovation century. It's an urban century. You put the two together, you get innovation districts, the true convergence economy. Thank you for coming.